Greetings. In this video, we are going to look at Mantrapushpam decoded, the secrets of the 5 elements from the Vedas and their interrelation. So you would have heard the Mantrapushpam being recited in practically every ritual or puja related to Hinduism. It starts off with the verse of Om Yopam Pushpam Veda Pushpavan Prajavan Pashuman Bhavati, and so forth. So this is from the Krishna Yajur Veda, the Taittiriya Shakha, and it's very much recited during the offering of flowers to the deity. Now let us move into a brief introduction to the Vedas, because this portion is verily from the Vedas, to give a glimpse on the importance of it. So the entire universe is reverberating. When there is reverberation, there is sound. In other words, the entire cosmos is simply a manifestation of sound energy. The ancient Vedic sages, through penance, activated the non-mechanical parts of their brains, which enabled them to download cosmic data directly. They received these cosmic truths in the form of sounds which they heard and envisioned. The truths which were received as mantras were recited as received and passed on generations after generations. So various truths were downloaded by various rishis, which gave rise to the ocean of the Vedas. Veda Vyasa later compiled these Vedas and classified them. This is how the 4 Vedas came to existence in a very brief explanation. Each of these Vedas had many branches, and each branch had 4 components: the Samhita, the Brahmana, the Aranyaka, and the Upanishad. So Mantrapushpam comes under the Aranyakam of the Krishna Yajur Veda. It is the part of the Vedas which was traditionally learnt in the forest region. So Mantrapushpam, to briefly put, this portion speaks on the truths of creation. It speaks on the interrelationship between all the 5 elements, and it declares as to how the 5 elements emerged or is verily a manifestation of Atmana consciousness. From consciousness emerged ether, from ether came air, from air came fire, from fire came water, and from the water emerged earth. The source of all these elements is the Atman itself. Now there is a detailed video on the very origins of these elements itself, so which you can find in the descriptions below. Now in this video, Mantrapushpam is quite specific on the relationship between the 5 elements. So how can water be produced from fire, and earth from water, and fire from air? This is what the Mantrapushpam actually speaks about, in a way which all the elements are interlinked and each being a source for another. Now isn't this rather confusing? In fact, many Greek philosophers have similarly propounded on the truths of Mantrapushpam, the truths which have been already found as Mantrapushpam. For example, a common verse in the Mantrapushpam which occurs very repetitively: Yopamayatanam Veda Ayatanavan Bhavati, meaning he who knows the source of water becomes established in himself. To quote an instance, Thales, the Greek philosopher, believed that everything came out from water. Now let us look at the interconnection between the elements first. There is a verse from the Mantrapushpam which goes as Agnirva Apamayatanam, which means fire is the source of water. Similarly, there is a verse which comes as Apova Agnirayatanam, which means water is the source of fire. So let's see what this actually means. So fire is the third of the 5 elements that constitute the universe. Fire is the basis of the 4th element, water. So says the Vedas. The hymn also declares the truth vice versa, that water is the source for fire. You can actually find this truth by observing nature. For example, water in the clouds is the basis of the fire in the form of lightning, isn't it? Number 2, vice versa, water in the form of digestive juices is the source of the digestive fire. Next, we will be looking at the relationship between air and water. So a verse which goes as Vayurva apa mayatanam, which means air is the source of water. And the next verse, Apo vai vayorayatanam, which means water is the source of air. So as the second of the 5 elements, we see that air is said to be the basis of the fourth element, water. And the vice versa is also true. Now if we look at the phenomenon of the nature, condensation and evaporation. To just take an example, in condensation, air in the form of vapor, which is gas, is the source of water in the form of dew and rain, which is liquid. And in evaporation, we see the opposite, a phenomenon where water becomes the source of air, as in vapor. Now we are looking at the relationship between scorching sun and water. It comes in the verse Asau vai tapannapa mayatanam, which means the scorching sun is the very source of water. See, the heat from the sun is responsible for the water cycle. And this is how we say that the sun, the scorching sun, is the source which is responsible for the water cycle. Next, we are looking at the relationship between moon and water. We have a verse which goes as Chandramava apa mayatanam, which means the moon is the source of water. Similarly, Apo vai chandramasa ayatanam, water is the source of the moon. So how is this? The moon's movement is responsible for the rise and fall of tides all over the world. The moon is thus the basis of water because its gravity influences the ocean and seas. And water becomes the source for the moon based on our Puranas, which actually declare that the moon rose like a lotus flower during the churning of the Milky Ocean. Next, we are going to look at the relationship between stars and water. The verse, Nakshatrani va apa mayatanam, which means the stars are the very source of water. Stars or the constellations we see in the skies are the source of the creation. Water in the form of rain is produced on earth due to the revolvement of the earth around the sun and its rotation about its axis. Thus, stars become the source of water. Now we are going to look at the relationship between the clouds and water. So we have the verse Parjanyo va apa mayatanam, which means clouds are the source of water. In other verse, Apo vai parjanyas yayatanam, water is the source of clouds. Clouds produce rain. Water in turn is the origin of the rain-bearing clouds through evaporation. Next, we are going to look at time and water. In the verse, Samvatsaro va apa mayatanam, which means time, which is in the form of year and season, is the source of water. Another verse declares, Apo vai samvatsaras yayatanam, water is the source of time. Time in the form of seasons is the cause for the water cycle and flow of water, which regenerates water. The degree of presence or absence of water in turn affects the seasons of the years. Now that is in a superficial level. So if we look at the profound dimension of this hymn, all the 5 elements as said emerge from Atman. You can give it a lot of terms: God, consciousness, Brahman. So Atma is all pervasive and all inclusive. The energy of this state is pure love. Love is the water of life. God is love. Love is God, says Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Across the Vedas, we find that water is used to represent absolute consciousness or Godhood or the state of enlightenment, which is wave like a fluid. And so love here, which we'll be using in the next part of the video, The term love here can be equated to the realization of the self, the state of enlightenment, which is all pervasive, all inclusive. So if we look at the first verse of the Mantrapushpam itself, it comes as Yopam Puspam Veda Pushpavan Prajavan Pashuman Bhavati, meaning the entire universe is made of water, which is the basis of everything. When one knows the secrets of the flowers of water, his heart blossoms and he is blessed with flowers and kettles. Flower, Pushpam, refers to the spiritual heart, the heart where God is seated, where absolute consciousness is seated. It is referred to as the Ananda Kanda in the yogic tradition. So this flower is that which never fades away. So knowing this, we can express the repeated line in the hymn, which comes as only one who knows the source of love attains that source, which is God. So one who knows the source of love, which is God, attains that source, which is God. So as the Upanishads declare, one who knows God becomes God. When we look at the relationship between fire and water, fire also refers to the light or knowledge. Knowledge is the basis of love. In any relationship, understanding is very important. Adjustment without understanding is of no good. Understanding leads to automatic adjustment and love. Thus, knowledge is the basis of love. Love is the greatest motivator. Love for any object propels us to know more about the object. Thus, love is the basis of knowledge. When we talk about air and water, air moves about freely everywhere without any restrictions. It represents expansion and absence of limiting boundaries. Such expansion is the source of love. Universal and selfless love, in turn, is the basis of all expansion. When we look at the scorching sun and water, the word used for the scorching sun is also a word used for penance. Tapta actually means heat, and that is how we get the word tapas, because penance is directly related to inner heat. So intense effort or penance is the basis for love, and love is the primary motivation for the intense effort. The sun also represents our vision. Our vision sharpens our love, and love in turn shapes our vision. And when we look at moon and water, the moon represents the mind. This is actually well proclaimed in the Vedas in the form of the Purusha Sukta hymn, in which we have a verse which goes as Chandrama Manaso Jataha. So as we think using the mind, so do we become. Our mind shapes our cognition of the world and reality. Mind is thus the basis of what we love, and love is also the basis for our thoughts. When we look at the stars and water, stars shine brightly, dispelling the darkness and acting as a navigator in the darkness of the night. They represent the ability within each one of us to act as beacon of lights amid the darkness of hatred, divisiveness, and ignorance. Such is the ability which we get from love. Clouds and water. Clouds are the reservoir of water, but they do not keep any water to themselves. They share all their water as rain. Thus, they represent selflessness. Selfishness and pure love do not go together. Selflessness is the basis of love, and love is the foundation of selflessness. And now we look at time and water. With time, all of us have to realize that we are embodiments of love. Thus, time is the basis of love. Every being has to eventually get enlightened after innumerable births to realize himself as God. So this is a brief breakdown and insight on the Mantrapushpam. Thank you for watching.